Hi, and welcome to the Hague Tech Podcast. I'm Weiler-Ulin, and I'm here with Thomas van Oort-Mersen, and we're just here to give you a short introduction to ourselves, the idea of the podcast, and allow you to get a head start on what we're trying to do and introduce you to the Hague Tech and our community and all of our initiatives in building. So today we're just going to do short interviews with each other for you guys to get to know the hosts. So to get to know Thomas, this is Thomas van Oort-Mersen.
Hi guys.
We just wanted to sit here and get to know a little bit about yourself and find out what the community means to you and bring. So how'd you get here and why are you still here?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, I was introduced by a good friend of mine to the three founders of the Hague Tech. And initially they hired me to help them with creating more exposure for the community. And I stayed because they were and still are very nice people. They have a really great energy. They're all three very good in what they do. And they created and are creating just a real cool place, a relaxed place to work.
Yeah, and how so far has someone helped you here? What have you gotten?
Well, the cool thing is that my background is I'm a consultant in PR communications, and I give media trainings. And during my career, I worked for several big tech companies. I worked for Uber, Spotify, Bank, which is the digital bank recently set up actually 2 years ago here in the Netherlands. So I'm used to working within a tech environment and dealing with tech stories. Story mining, bringing those stories to a broader public. And initially I was inspired and interested about the concept of a tech community, and also from my perspective, being an entrepreneur looking for business. And the Hague Tech hired me to help them with organizing an event, helping them with their messaging. We did a message house session, and at one point they asked me, if you want, you can stay within the community, because it was, in the beginning of the whole concept. And I said, why not? I live and work. Well, actually, I live and work in The Hague, but I have several customers, in the Netherlands. So I traveled a lot. I was looking for a place, sort of headquarter workplace where I just, one, could meet other people, because I'm an independent consultant. I like to work with people, but also, have some talks about what's going on in, The Hague or in the world of technology. And I found it all here. And it helped me. For instance, a concrete example was at one point I needed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, and at that time I did not have any documentation on that. And I asked the guys during lunch, does anybody have an NDA for me I can use for a client? And 5 minutes later I had one in my email box, which is a really concrete example of the knowledge sharing and just sharing your challenges. This was a small challenge.
You can always Google, find an NDA template, get me an NDA, but there's something different about actually having that person along with it that can verify what you're getting and help you get to that point.
And understanding what you really need, because Google's, trying to look something based on keywords you think are right, but here you get a sort of validation. Well, maybe you should use another keyword, or maybe you should look at from another point of perspective, and it's really helpful, to get a sort of broader perspective than, the funnel you're in. And from my perspective, PR communication consultant, so you're working, with exposure and journalists and a sort of environment which really well. And it's really interesting to use other environments with different experiences and influences, and combine that in your output or your deliverables or what you
Google
do.
Can't challenge you on when you ask for an NDA, are you asking
exactly.
for the right thing? And these people can actually challenge you into finding, are you doing the right thing?
Yeah.
And because when you Google something, it's a massive information. It's not critical analysis that you get.
It's actually a good thing. You say, when you ask Google a question, but Google never asks a question back, and here you get a lot of questions back, and it really helps you form your ideas or your strategy, and it really challenges you.
And so you talked about having your own consultancy and having worked for these big companies, and a tech scene is always around the idea of startups and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Well, it's a difficult question for me because when I hear the word entrepreneur, it makes me think of having 400 people in an organization and build stuff, or I'm from Rotterdam originally, and their entrepreneurs are people who build boats. I'm not building boats. I help people with exposure. That's actually it. I help people with thinking about how to bring something on the radio, TV, or online in videos. I'm an entrepreneur in a way. I think that I use my knowledge and expertise to explore possibilities to make a business, to make money, but also to fulfill my curiosity in life. And
it's such a broad term. It's all of these things that you're talking about. It can encompass so many different things.
It's a heavy term, entrepreneur. Yeah. It almost provides you sort of obligation to live up to.
Yeah, and it's something that many people don't question. People call themselves an entrepreneur, but then again, when you talk to people like yourself who don't call yourself an entrepreneur, but when you ask, are you? It's a lot of times yes.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times it's how do we actually look at who's an entrepreneur? What does that entail? How do we define this?
In my opinion, there's also sort of myth around the word entrepreneur, because entrepreneur almost stands equal to success. And I think I'm successful in a small way, but not in a big way. I'm not making impact or
I mean, all panhandlers in a way are their own entrepreneurs.
Yeah. But maybe I'm too modest. I don't know. I think it's a difficult. I like to be entrepreneurial.
Yeah, it's being entrepreneurial is much more important than actually being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's the difference between be and do.
Yeah, and
I'm more a do person.
Yeah, and I think that's more of what we need, and I think that's where, from what I've seen, where the community is going a lot towards people who truly do. And there's signs everywhere saying, don't think about it, do it, start it.
And I think also when people ask you, are you an entrepreneur, I think you do something wrong, because they have to double check it.
Yeah.
And I think it's better just to show and people know instead of. But anyway, that's a different question.
Yeah. So thanks so much for even me getting to know you a bit better, because I didn't know your past with all of these large companies and how you got here. And I think that it's going to give us a great perspective when talking to different people who have been in these levels of success or haven't, and to challenge them on the same thing, because that's a lot of what I want to do. I want to challenge people. We're here denying buzzwords. Yeah. And I think that's fun. And I think saying buzzwords aren't worth anything unless they truly create a buzz. If a word's just a word, it's no longer having that strength of creating conversations, creating conflicts. Yeah. And entrepreneurialism has kind of reached that level. Yeah. So let's question it.
Yeah, well, questioning things is a big aspect of what I do. What I hope to bring to the table in these podcasts is asking the right questions, and not only about the usual discussions and topics, but also in a broader perspective, personal perspective. Being an entrepreneur and the way you are influenced is most of the times not by business, but by people, or by your parents, or by your your girlfriend, or the place where you grew up. And those are the most interesting stories, because at the end you don't want to hear or listen to business pitches every time. You really want to get to know people. You really want to understand what's going on.
You want to hear people pitches. You want to know the person, not their business. And I think that's a good place to move on, because I think through this podcast and this series we'll get more of that from you, and we'll figure out some of these
It shouldn't
things.
Be a pitch contest.
Yeah, no, this is not a pitch contest. This is not the pitch, and this is not Shark Tank. This is just getting to know people and understanding where they're intentions are, where they're coming from, and what they're truly trying to do.
And the thing is, in my line of work, that's the most difficult thing, for instance, working with startups. Because everybody's so focused on the pitch and is challenged by the pitch, and they're repeating themselves over and over every day. Whether
this is also not just to say very quickly, I love the podcast, The Pitch. So we're not trying to be negative on that. It's the general idea of the pitch, not the podcast, The Pitch.
No, but actually, the pitch is of course one aspect, within the time frame and getting over an idea. But usually the next steps are based on the person.
Yeah, and I mean you see that in pitching happening. But to close it up, I just want to thank you for taking the time, for everyone to get to know you, and for me to get to know you better. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to us today, and I'd implore everyone to subscribe to us on iTunes, on SoundCloud, and on YouTube, because we're going to try to get our content out there for everyone to have an opportunity to be part of the community, even in the small way of catching up with what we're doing. And I'd like to thank the New Media Studio, who we're recording with today and who has been our sponsor and our biggest help in production, and especially Martijn, who is our director and our producer, and would like to thank all of them, along with the Hague Tech, for providing the platform, for providing the community, and for providing literally the building that we're sitting in for us to be able to do this. And I very much appreciate everyone staying tuned for our next conversations. Thank you very much.
See you guys.